Good afternoon, everyone, and I would like to open and welcome and call to order our Middlesex County Council meeting for Tuesday, March 23rd, 2021. We are now officially in spring. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? This weekend was certainly a wonderful kickoff to spring. What a treat we got from Mother Nature. I took the opportunity to begin cleaning up our place, and did I ever get a good workout, picking up all the sticks and branches we lost over the winter. I did have to run out for a couple of errands, and I did take notice of everyone taking advantage of the great weekend weather we experienced, whether it was cleaning up yards or walking trails or sidewalks in parks or visiting patios that were able to open. It was a boost to the spirit to see everyone out. I know that your municipalities are all coming to life, and it is so welcome after winter and pandemic living. That being said, we still have to be incredibly mindful of respecting protocols and parameters that are still in front of us. We still have to remind our residents to keep their bubble tight. As tempting as it is to expand it, we are still not out of the woods, and your social circle needs to be a small one. Continue with the physical distancing and do not stop wearing masks. It is still mandated after all. While we see promises of making our way out of this, there is still work to be done. That being said, I'm proud of the effort of our residents and businesses that they are putting in. It's hard work, but it is clear that we are in this together. I have had the privilege to take on a few volunteer shifts at the vaccination clinic in Mount Bridges, as have some of our senior staff. And actually, I saw Councillor Vanderheyden out there on Sunday morning as we traded shift times. What a great experience it has been. And I want to thank everyone involved in making the clinic come together as it has. It is a real team effort there, and it is evident as soon as you walk through the doors. Much of this is due to the efforts of our team, of Bettina, John, Chris, and the SERVE team. We are very fortunate to have this group under our umbrella, and I know that they've been excited to have been deployed at the Mount Bridges Clinic. Our commitment there is coming to an end in the next few weeks, but our presence there has made a difference to the organization. And again, I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone that has been involved in making that happen. Great work, team. So we have in front of us the minutes from the budget meeting that was held on March the 9th at 10 a.m. And unless there is nothing to be amended, I would ask for a mover and a seconder to approve those as presented. Councillor Mayhew and Councillor Vanderheyden. All opposed? And that's carried. And then for the regular Middlesex County Council meeting that was held on March 9th. Again, if there's nothing to be amended, then I would look for a mover and seconder for those minutes. Councillor Richards and Councillor Elliott. All opposed? And that's carried. We actually do have a couple of deputations today, and I'm pleased to welcome at this time Stephen Jellick, who is the Director of the Southwest Region Operations with Enbridge. And at this time, I will hand it over to Stephen, and he can present to us the Enbridge Gas's London Lines project update.
Okay, I just want to, well, first of all, thank you, Your Worship, and members of Council for the opportunity to present this afternoon. I'm assuming that the presentation is available and somebody will be.
Yep, you talk, Stephen, and good things will happen.
Oh, that's
there.
That is actually the best line I've heard. I'll say in a year. I've never been given that sort of compliment. Anyways, again, my name's Steve Jellick, and I'm the Director for Southwest Operations at Enbridge Gas. And joining me today will be Daryl Arnold. He's the Manager of London Sarnia Operations. We also have Alison Chong. She's the project manager for London Line Replacement Project. And lastly, and very importantly, is Brian Lenny, who is our senior advisor for municipal relations. Again, we're here principally to talk about our London Line Replacement Project. This is a significant infrastructure project that we're really pleased about, of course. And I'll say, in addition, what comes with this and the routing is there's going to be a likelihood of an increase of customer ability to actually get natural gas as a result of this replacement line. And we'll get into that a little bit later. The one thing before we move off this slide is I would want to thank the staff because, quite frankly, these projects never come together unless there's good working relationship. And the feedback I've received is we've had very good discussions with the county and other municipal staff along the way. So we've been quite fortunate that way. Not unexpected, by the way, but certainly appreciated. And maybe if we can just go to the next slide. Okay, great. Thank you. And what I want to touch on here is just 2 points. I mean, you can look at the pic and you can see, the footprint for Enbridge Gas is significant throughout the province of Ontario. And of course, many of you will recall us when we had conversations being Union Gas, but that all changed on January 1st, 2019. We amalgamated the Union Gas Limited Utility and the Enbridge Gas Distribution Utility to form one. So with that, a significant utility in Ontario. And what you would see is we're probably, in terms of size, customer size, probably the third largest in customers in North America, and I would say we are the largest throughput in North America. So again, significant size. Next slide, please. Maybe one of the most important slides here. Safety is and will always be our number one priority. To give you a sense, the $2.9 billion that you see there over the last 8 years, that's simply our investment in integrity programs. That doesn't talk about the day-to-day running, nor does it talk about our growth projects. So I think you get a sense for the commitment to the safety and reliability of our assets. And if we can just move to the next slide, please. Yeah, this is a great pick in terms of getting a sense of the coverage. We've been proudly serving since 1935. As you can see, the range of customers, residential, commercial, industrial. Again, very good footprint here. And not least of is the property taxes that we pay. And we sort of call it, this is our passive assets. No snow clearing, no garbage pickup, but we're happy to certainly pay our property taxes of $6.85 million. And just moving on to our next slide. And I'll say I'm quite proud about this. I don't know if anyone's following us, but we have made a commitment, that's Enbridge, to be net zero by 2050. With an interim goal of 35% reduction by 2030. This is significant. And if we can get to the next slide, I'll just give you a sense of the 4 pillars that we have to help us get there. And so our low carbon future really relies on pillar number 1, and that's less gas. So really reducing our emissions by helping our customers, whether they be residential, commercial, industrial. And that's looking at energy efficiency programs, promoting natural gas heat pumps, and really full blast, no pun intended, on our demand side management program. So incenting people and educating people to actually use less of our gas. The other pillar, or the next pillar number 2, is more gas. So really, when I say more gas, it means replacing oil, propane, with cleaner burning natural gas for home and water heating. And I would say that the other component of that, and very important, is switching heavy duty transportation with cleaner burning natural gas, compressed natural gas. So I think this is important, an important piece of the puzzle as well. Thirdly, green gas. So reducing emissions using carbon neutral gas. So what I'm talking about there is blending hydrogen and renewable natural gas from organic waste into our distribution system. And lastly, yes, you heard me right, no gas. And that's geothermal, hydrogen, and focusing on renewable energy. So those are the ways that Enbridge sees the path forward to a less of a carbon footprint into the future. And if we can just progress to the next slide, and this is where I'll turn the presentation over to Daryl Arnold, and he'll speak about the London Line replacement project. So with that, over to you, Daryl.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. And again, thank you, Council, for having us this afternoon. So we'll start in the first slide here, kind of a macro view of the existing London Line's pipeline system and what the full plan for the replacement project is. So as you can see, the existing London Line's pipeline is a two-pipeline system running from our Dawn compressor station in Dawn, Euphemia, up through to our Komoka transmission station in Middlesex Center, and spanning about 82 kilometers. So the project that we're undertaking this year is to replace this pipeline system with a single pipeline operating at a higher pressure. These pipelines were originally installed in the 1930s and 1950s. So this is an important investment in the local area. Maintaining and improving the overall integrity of the pipeline network, increasing the system flexibility, ensuring adequate gas supply to Middlesex County. And I think as Steve opened up with, Enbridge did undertake an extensive consultation program for this project that included a third-party environmental report, a virtual open house process, something new for us given the COVID protocols, mail-outs to local residents, consultations with conservation authorities and Indigenous communities, and of course, as Steve mentioned, regular and ongoing discussions with municipal staff. Enbridge has chosen Aecon to be the primary contractor for this project, and where we can, we will be focusing on hiring local construction employees and sourcing local materials wherever possible. If we could proceed to the next slide, please. So this slide is kind of narrows down into Middlesex County itself, and kind of what we'll see as the construction piece in that area. So currently, the existing London Line services hundreds of customers directly and indirectly, through the pipeline system. So including communities like Newbury, Wardsville, Glencoe, Appin, Melbourne, Mount Bridges, Komoka, and Kilworth Heights. And I think the message here is that's not going to change. So anybody who receives gas service today and is connected to the pipeline system today will be connected to the new pipeline system. And I think, again, as Steve mentioned, one of the really good news stories out of this project is, we estimate about 40 to 45 additional properties will be opened up to have access to natural gas through different route changes and through the addition of a new 8-kilometer pipeline lateral that will connect the London Line pipeline system to our Dawn the Parkway pipeline transmission system. So the process for that is, we'll be reaching out to those 40, 45 property owners to discuss what that process is, and if they have interest in connecting the natural gas system. So we foresee that occurring in 2022 post-construction activities. Construction for the project is planned to kick off here in April this spring and expected to be completed by December of 2021. We do expect some project cleanup and restoration activities to carry on into 2022. And as I said, we'll also, the 2022 work likely also include attaching any new customers. As Enbridge starts to ramp up construction, again, we're going to continue to work with municipal staff on the project, ensuring that all permitting and project road approvals are in place and obtained, and we're following all the permit requirements and meeting the terms of the franchise agreement that we have in place with Middlesex County. And I guess the other important thing to note is that our construction yard for this project is going to be located within Southwest Middlesex. We could advance to the next slide, please. So what can residents expect during construction? So the first activities, which I've kicked off at this point, we'll be setting up our construction yard, site preparation, some tree and vegetation clearing, and we're going to start stringing and welding pipe. And as I said, beginning in April, we expect full construction activities to kick off. As I mentioned, any resident who's connected to the pipeline service will continue to have natural gas service going forward. But this will require an interruption service to connect to the new pipeline system. We'll be reaching out to those customers and arranging a time that's most convenient for them. This switchover, I would say, is a minor inconvenience. Generally takes place well within one business day. So we will be reaching out to those customers in the near future. This project will also have a community liaison person, Natasha Carr, and she'll be charged with keeping residents and local first responders organizations and Middlesex County and other key stakeholders informed of various different activities as we progress through construction. So items like road closures or road detours, items of that nature. This individual is going to be able to respond to any questions, comments, or concerns that are raised up through residents along the construction route. We also have a landowner relations agent assigned to this project, Adam Lashbrook, and he'll be directly available to affected landowners, again, to discuss any questions, concerns that they raise throughout the construction process. As you can see, we've set up a telephone line and an email address that can be utilized to reach out to these individuals. And we also have a project web page that is available for updates throughout the project. And as a final note, Enbridge recognizes that these are challenging economic times for residents in Middlesex County and across the province in general. And as such, the project will have a community investment budget available to support local organizations as they support the community. So Natasha Carr will be reaching out during construction to organizations across the county to investigate where Enbridge can best assist. I actually had a good conversation with Natasha this morning, about the specific topic, and certainly would invite anyone to reach out to her directly or to Brian, Lenny, and myself, and we can get you the right information, the right contacts. So with that, again, want to thank Council today for having us, and certainly open if there's any questions that anyone may have.
Okay, well, thanks very much, gentlemen. I think that was a very timely update as to where you are with your project. And at this stage, I will ask Council if there's any questions, comments. Councillor Vander Hayden.
Thank you through the ward, and thank you for the presentation. I've been watching this unfold in front of my house for a year or so now, and all the different flags going up, flags going down, gravel going in, trees being cut yesterday and trimmed. So it's been interesting to watch. So congratulations on getting this off the ground, because through a pandemic, it's always interesting that we can still get a lot of work done. And so congrats on that. My question hasn't got to do with this actual project, but has to do with with gas in general and the things that are going on in the United States with Line 5. Is there something that we need to be aware of, or is there something that maybe down the road we're going to need to report on to figure out how we can ensure that Line 5 continues to go through Ontario and into Quebec? Because if it gets closed down at the border, it's going to affect a lot of businesses all the way from Sarnia all the way up. That's just my question. I know it doesn't relate to this project, but since I've got the experts on the line, I thought I would ask the question.
Who wants to take that one?
Yeah, maybe I'll take a crack at it, Joanne. I'll say, I don't want to understate Enbridge and in terms of Line 5, our concern, but I think we're pretty confident in terms of, despite what you sort of see, in the media, I think we're pretty confident that we're going to be able to work this out without seeing an interruption on Line 5. although this piece is on our liquid side, and of course we're on the utility gas side, we are still pretty much connected, and obviously quite concerned that it does fall in the southwest region, the connectivity to Sarnia. But I would say that based on what I'm aware of today, we feel very comfortable or confident that that line will not be interrupted and will continue to flow the liquid through and supply the end users. I don't know if Brian Lenny, if you're on the line, if you wanted to add anything, Brian. I will add that later this week that our Executive Vice President, Cynthia Hanson, will actually be speaking to the London Chamber, and she will speak on Line 5. She'll talk about our diversity and inclusion, and she'll also talk a little bit more about our transition to sort of a less carbon footprint. So I don't know if any of you participate in the London Chamber, but that will be occurring, I believe. Sorry, that's not this week. That'll be Tuesday of next week. That Cynthia Hanson, our Executive Vice President, will be speaking on that.
Thanks, Stephen. Brian, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Just in terms of the plans for Line 5, we feel that the plans to modernize the line through the tunnel project, they fit well with President Biden's Build Back Better strategy, and the tunnel, the construction of the tunnel will proceed. We're hopeful once all permits are received. So, I mean, we have a solution in place, and we're quite confident that it fits with President Biden's mandate going forward.
Did you have any further follow-up, Councillor Vander Hayden?
No, thank you for the answer. Yeah.
Okay, good. Any other questions or comments from Council at this time? Councillor Mayhew.
Thank you, Madam Warden, and thank you, Stephen and Daryl, for your presentation. Southwest Middlesex is an integral part of this, and our staff are enjoying the work you have in your connections you've made with them. The question I ask, and I know that this conversation is not about the expansion of natural gas, but in view of the fact that one row over from this replacement is a market of numerous people and very, very large farm operations. We're finding that the farm operations, and particularly the drying operations of grain, are getting huge. And I would be less than a good mayor if I didn't put in a plug that we are anxiously awaiting an expansion of the utility that you provide to new customers. The road I'm speaking about is Old Drive. And I think there's 57 residential houses on there. There's 7 large farm operations on there. And it's just a stone throw from this road. So we do hope in the future that we can come up with some business model and business plan to expand that gas across the field. Thanks very much. And again, I enjoyed your presentation.
If I could just add, oh, sorry, Stephen, if you want.
No, I was just going to say thank you, Councillor Mayhew. And I mean, I've written that down. I would say that that's something I'll get back to our construction manager and just understand if there are existing plans or potential plans for that. But no, I appreciate the comments, and certainly we'll take that away. Thank you.
If I could just add, so the Old Drive in Middlesex area was actually included as part of our submission to the provincial government for the Phase 2 natural gas expansion program. So we are just as well as you anxiously awaiting the results of that. And we had heard initially the province was supposed to make an announcement the first quarter of the year. We're not quite sure when that announcement is going to be made, but I think there were a lot of eyes open at the province by the fact that I believe roughly around $2 billion worth of projects were submitted for their natural gas expansion program. And I think it's given the province likely some pause to figure out how they can facilitate a greater number of expansions. And so we're hopeful to hear the results on that shortly.
Brian, the reason I think it's good to level set as well, and maybe, there's $2 billion worth of projects submitted, but the budget for that, I believe, is about $140, $160 million. So it's level setting the expectations that while there's many projects submitted in the community expansion program, many more won't be receiving it versus the ones that will receive it. And that's where I would say, even if your potential project doesn't get sort of the green light with respect to this program, it's not to say that we can't look with our own regional construction group to see what opportunities may lie ahead of us with respect to, whether it's the old drive or other projects in the area.
Any follow-up, Councillor Mayhew?
Thank you, Madam Warden. I'm aware of those numbers, and I know that the requests are much oversubscribed than what the funds provided by the province are. And I hope it doesn't just turn into a lottery. I hope that there is some, serious consideration given to some of these rural municipalities, and particularly the agricultural sector. Thank you again. I know you're doing your best. Thank you, Madam Warden.
Thanks. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Well, we've got Enbridge with us. Okay, seeing none, thank you again for the presentation and the update, and we will certainly be following along and watching the progress of it. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Warden and Council. Have a good afternoon.
Yep, you as well. Great to see you. Okay, we'll move on to our second presentation, and I'm happy to welcome our friends from MPAC this afternoon. This was put together relatively quickly, so I appreciate the accommodation to the request. And at this point, I'd like to welcome and turn it over to Brenda Slater, who is the account manager with Zone 1. Brenda. Oh, Brenda, you're muted.
There, is that better? Am I okay?
Good.
I was going to say everything looks unmuted on me, so I apologize for that. But
no
thank
worries.
you very much, Your Worship, members of council and staff. We certainly appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to you today. As mentioned, I am the account manager for Middlesex County, Elgin, the City of London, and the Municipality of Chatham-Kent. And I'm also pleased to say that joining me today is our new regional manager, Anne Haynes. And so she is also the regional manager for Zone 1, and she'll be jumping in later on in the presentation. So the first slide the next slide that we have, you may have seen this graphic before. The next slide, it speaks to Ontario's property assessment and taxation system. And the reason that we include this slide is it is important to note that the provincial government sets the legislation and the policies that MPAC uses to assess properties. And when there's tax policy issues, when there's changes to the way that MPAC assesses properties, that is also at the jurisdiction of the provincial government. As you know, that if municipalities work with our assessment values to determine property taxes, and if property owners have questions or concerns about their property taxes specifically, we would encourage them to get in touch with their municipality. As you know, MPAC determines the assessed value based on a legislated valuation date. That's also determined by the Ministry of Finance. And property owners with questions concerning their property assessment would be encouraged to reach out to MPAC. One of the things to note as well is that property owners can file a request for reconsideration, which is requesting MPAC review their assessment. It is free of charge, but there are deadlines to the reconsiderations, and it's March 31st of 2021 for this year. Or if property owners have received an assessment notice in year, the reconsideration deadline would be clearly noted on their form, on their notices. The next slide is noting the next province-wide assessment update, and we don't actually know when the next assessment province-wide update will be, and we don't actually know yet what that valuation date will be. We will certainly share that information when the provincial government gives us that direction. In the meantime, we are continuing to keep our data current, and we do continue to work closely with municipalities and property owners. We are reviewing our building permits, we are conducting property inspections, we are responding to inquiries from property owners as they've reached out to our office. The next slide provides the information that we do know. Property values continue to be based on the market as of January 1, 2016, which was our last valuation date. So we would have established the value of every property in Ontario based on that January 1, 2016. As well, keeping in mind that if we make changes to the property assessment, we are still continuing to use that consistent valuation date, so that every property at this time is valued as of the same point in time on that date. And then again, as we know what the new date will be, we will absolutely share that. The next slide speaks to our 2020 Municipal Partnerships Report, and we shared this report with Council earlier in the year in January. It is available on our website, and I certainly encourage you to review the report if you've not already done so. And a couple of the highlights, when we consulted with our municipalities needed MPAC to keep the business going with minimal disruption to our services. So we did continue to capture as much new assessment to support the municipal tax bases. We did extend our year-end deadline last year by 2 weeks to capture additional assessment. As well, we looked for new ways to capture the assessment information, to add as much to the assessment rolls as we were able to. The next slide speaks to some of those new ways, and we really did need to collaborate with municipalities to look for different ways on how we can get the information to assess properties. We knew that construction projects continued to go, and we wanted to ensure that we were still capturing that new construction. We built a safe way for municipalities to submit digital building plans to us electronically. And to date, we've captured 500 plus electronic plans from municipalities right across Middlesex County. And we were able to capture $227 million in new assessment as well for all of the municipalities across the county. We hope that in addition to the electronic plans, we also launched curbside pickup program. We're not currently utilizing curbside pickup across Middlesex. However, that is certainly an option that we've developed if needed. And I think going forward, we will absolutely be keeping the exchange of electronic plans in place. The next slide speaks briefly to our role in the building permit process. And as you may be aware, MPAC receives monthly building permits from all of our municipalities. We ingest all of that information directly into our tracking system. As well, we receive occupancy and final inspection dates as well to help manage our workload. And as I mentioned, we are now capturing electronic building permit plans. For those municipalities in the orange restrict zone, MPAC has developed a COVID operating framework, and it aligns with the province's COVID-19 response framework. So for those municipalities in the orange restrict zone, MPAC staff are able to conduct field work as well as property inspections where required. The last slide that I wanted to speak to was sharing with you the total assessment base for the County of Middlesex. And this is based on the January 1, 2021, so the assessment roll for the 2021 taxation year. And you can see the total current value assessment straight across Middlesex County, and then how the different property types make up that percentage. So that was the last slide that I wanted to speak to. At this time, I want to turn things over to Ann Haynes, as I mentioned, who is our new regional manager for Zone 1.
Great. Thank you, Brenda, and thanks for having us here today, Your Worship and members of council. My name is Ann Haynes. I am the new regional manager in the zone, and you can see from the slide, I'm actually coming from Zone 5 down to Zone 1. So I'm excited to be taking on this role. I'm very impressed with the partnerships, especially during COVID in 2020 and the pandemic, and our great work between our staff, Brenda and Judy, and our MPAC staff with the municipal staff in Middlesex County. So very encouraged to see the work that we've done, the great work on the electronic exchange of plans, and the safety and concern for our property owners, as well as increased communication and opportunities to connect and stay connected through the pandemic. So I see that as a big success. And obviously, the historical review of our overall net growth to your assessment base has been strong. So I have reviewed that and I am very impressed, as well as our commitment to you through the service level agreement. That's been a very well received, and we've been very clear at communicating when we have had maybe a hiccup or two, but I can say it's been very well received at your end and our end, and the working together and the staying connected is what's made it a success. So our commitment to you is to keep you informed on the service level agreement and staff, and to achieve timeliness of assessments for our property owners. One way to stay connected with us is through our monthly webinars, which is on the screen, as well as our newsletter, our In Touch newsletter, which staff and council can both sign up for. So I would encourage you, if you haven't taken the time or watched some of those webinars, you can get access to it from our website and view any of the ones that may be of interest to you. And although our offices are closed right now, we're still active in the communities, as Brenda mentioned, across Middlesex and across the province. And our municipal and stakeholder relations team, we're here to support you and in the communities that we service. I do encourage you to check out that partnership report that Brenda highlighted. And then while we await any news of what's going to happen with the budget dropping this week and with respect to the next assessment update, our commitment is to keep you well informed. So again, thanks for having me quickly today. I'm really excited to join the team, and if there's any issues, pain points, anything that makes you smile, anything at all, don't hesitate. Reach out, and our contact information is on the slide. So thanks again.
Great. Well, thanks very much, Brenda and Ann. It's great to have that update. Any comments, questions for council for the MPAC team? Councillor Vanderheyden.
Yes, thank you through the ward, and good to see you, Brenda. Nice to meet you, Ann. I just have to say that MPAC has been really good at keeping the communication flowing, and we really appreciate that, because this really is a partnership for all of us moving forward. My question has to do kind of outside the box. It has to do with the valuation of homes and the market value. The resale value of homes these days, in my opinion, are not the real value of a home. It's what the market seems to be able to accept in offers, and homes that really are not worth $700,000, but rather around the $300,000 because of the way the markets are rolling. The prices have gone through the roof. Now, this is not the first time this has happened, and I think it ebbs and flows. But since we have the 2016 numbers, I can't imagine what the numbers are today and what that would do to a person's tax bill. And I'm fearful as a mayor of how that reaction will happen if the numbers don't change in the next year or two when we get that next assessment put in place. I guess that's a comment, but a kind of a question. What are your thoughts on that, and how do we move through that kind of process?
I don't know who wants to take that one on.
Yeah, We can certainly, I'll jump in quickly, and Brenda, feel free to jump in as well and add. So we've been monitoring the market. I think Brenda spoke earlier that the work that we're continuing to do with keeping our data current, and we were well prepared and ready to set out the new, well, the former flow of the Jan 1st, 2019 market. That was what was going to be legislated, and it was paused. And of course, there wasn't quite a jump from what we were seeing even from 16 to 19 in some areas. And you're correct with supply and demand and what's on the market now. We're seeing even higher, some higher numbers, but we haven't been able to do a full analytics or review, and so it is a bit of a sort of crystal balling as to what might happen and what date they will pick and what that impact will be. But I will say that in an assessment update, as you may know, the new assessments, however high they are, and we get it that there would be an impact, they are to be revenue neutral, so that you would drop your tax rate down, right, to the average increase. And there will be some people that'll be above that and some people that'll be below that. And we do have a lovely video on our website that speaks to how this works. It's about a 3-minute video and it's great. So that if that helps ease any of it, I do know that there will be some people that will be higher and there will be an impact. But our job is to assess. Our job is to capture the market and to apply that consistently. So that's sort of my response. And I don't know, Brenda, if you want to add to that.
That was perfect. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Anne. Councillor Warwick.
Yes, I just made sure I unmute myself. Thank you, and again, thank you for Impact for presenting that presentation today. I just have a couple of comments or questions, and it's something I get asked quite often by our local farmers. It's regarding our solar farms. The assessment rate for them is quite low compared to what an industrial or commercial rate would be, and that always seems to be a bone of contention with the farmers because they say they're solar farms, but really they're no more a solar farm than Hydro One, really. And that is a question that I have a hard time explaining the answer to. So I'm just wondering, well, I've got you ladies here, if you could provide me with a brief reasoning behind the assessment with that. And also, just as another note, is Thames Centre is a member of TAPMO, one of the 10 aggregate producing municipalities of Ontario. And gravel pits, again, too, the assessment value on that is something that we're exploring and questioning. So I'm just wondering, Brenda, if you had any comments about that.
Yes, in regards to the solar panels, and I have to think off the top of my head, but it is based on the size of the solar farm. And depending on the size, it's also regulated rates as well. That's dictated right into the legislation. So in terms of the actual solar panels themselves, those are assessed based on legislated rates. The land and any buildings that are associated with that solar project would be assessed similar to other properties in the area, whether it be farmland or industrial land, et cetera. So that is one of the things that we've heard with the solar projects and other, thinking in terms of wind turbines, et cetera, any of the other energy product or energy providers. It is because those rates are legislated. So the actual structures themselves, the assessment that they're seeing is lower than what may be anticipated. I'm wondering as well, I think there is some information on our website if property owners wanted to visit impact.ca, and there is information on those different, like the solar farms and the wind turbines, et cetera, if they wanted other specific information. It kind of gets into a little more detail in how we do those assessments, which may help as well. And I don't know if Anne had anything specific to add on those as well.
No, I don't have anything specific other than what you said perfectly, that we are legislated under the farm, under section 19(5) of the Act, and how we value farms, which is different than how we value current, all the other properties, which is current value. So it is a specific component in the legislation that we have to be mindful of. And it is based on sales of those that are farming specifically. So in some markets it's lower, in some markets it's higher. It really does just vary. So compared to your industrial and your other property types, there may be a difference. And we simply have to capture that in our valuations.
Any follow-up from that, Councillor Rorick? Are you good?
I'm good. I know that we're continuing with the gravel pits in our association, so that's something that we'll address through there. But it is the solar fields that I get questioned at the coffee shop quite often, so it's always good to have an answer for that. Thank you.
Yes, I did. Just while Anne was speaking, it does indicate right on our website, it'll say how the small installations up to 10 kilowatts is assessed, the medium installations, and then the large. So it does break it down in detail for you, if that's helpful as well.
Bill, did you want to jump in with anything? I think you've got a couple comments.
Oh, I was just going to say, as a former board member, I get asked that question all the time in much larger coffee shops maybe, but the questions range, ladies will tell you, the questions range from everything from cell towers, how that's done, to if you go down to Essex County, it'll be about greenhouses. If you come into our territory, it'll be about gravel pits and solar farms. And MPAC's job is to measure, not to set the rates by which they're measured by or the methodology for that measurement. And so that's a question we get a lot. And Brenda's right and Anne's right. There are a lot of good videos out there on how that works, and we'll find those so that they're easy to answer. But it is a tough problem because many of the way that these are measured is often set by legislation, and MPAC is given the ruler, and then they apply it against that particular property. So it's frustrating for board members and former board members sometimes when you get those questions, because they think that MPAC actually can influence those things and they can talk about them with the province, but really those are provincial decisions that were made many years ago in the case of solar farms.
Thanks. Bill, any other questions or comments from council at this time? I just have one, and it really doesn't have anything to do with assessment. It more or less it has to do with the voters list. And given that we've got an election coming up in 2022, not sure if you guys are the ones that might have some insight as to how that's going to be handled. But I know during the last municipal election, there was a lot of concern about how the voters list was developed and where we were with that.
So I guess I'll jump in there, and Brenda, again, feel free to add. So we originally, there was some working with AMCTO and partnering with them and talking with them. And I know there was a review of the whole election process and who would do the preliminary list and the voters list, et cetera. And there was discussion that a third party should take that over and maybe come out of MPAC's purview. So that's where it was heading. There's been a shift. It looks like it's coming back for 2022 to MPAC, and how long we will keep it, I'm not sure. But so we will be tasked with the preliminary list of electors for the upcoming election. And any concerns, any pain points, I know Brenda works very closely with the clerks in the communities, and we always do a post-mortem after each election, and we sit down and we find out where those pain points were and maybe how we can improve for the next time. So we are open to feedback. We're willing to sit down and talk about those things, and we will roll out a communications plan once we get more information closer to the election. But you do have our commitment. I mean, there are some issues that or may or may not be MPAC. It may or may be the voter and the lack of sharing of information with us that inform those lists, or it could be us. So either way, we want to sit down, we want to get the data accurate, but we are solely reliant on the voter or the owner, the tenant, whoever's voting, we need to ensure that they tell us when they've moved. We need them to ensure that they loop us in when there's been a change to who's on the property, because due to FOI and other measures, we may or may not have access to the non-ownership community. I'll just leave it at that.
I think we'll all be anxious on the update and to watch to see how that all unfolds as we get closer to that date. Certainly, I think we're all in agreement that we could be excited about, finding out when the date will be for, assessment and capturing that. I think there's no secret that Middlesex County and our member municipalities have seen, a lot of exciting growth happening, and we'll be looking forward to being able to capture that and get those numbers out. Bill, did you want to chime in on anything before
I would just agree with you that in our area, and that you're now part of, the growth has been so dramatic since the last reassessment, and we're having trouble capturing that growth. Going back to Joanne's question, you answered it perfectly about if all the boats float up in terms of the cost of houses, and then there shouldn't be much revenue difference. But capturing that new growth is really the heart of Joanne's question of where we're really excited, because many places in Middlesex don't have development charges, and the way we pay for the new services that are of the new development that we have is through that growth assessment. So I think our council is very supportive of lobbying the government, of giving you the resources you need to get out and get that work done as fast as possible, and capture that more accurately than we have since the last reassessment. So I think you're going to find fertile ground for lots of support for a reassessment around this table, or this virtual table, as the case may be.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right, well, if there aren't any more questions or comments from council, I'd like to thank Anne and Brenda for joining us this afternoon. It was great to have that update, and we look forward to meeting with you again.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
take care.
Have a great afternoon. Okay, moving on. Any inquiries or notices of motion? Oh, Councillor Vander Hayden.
Yes, thank you. I have two things under inquiries and one under the comments down the way. The first one is, thank you, Madam Warden, on Rail Safety Improvement Program. And I'm going to send this one to Chris and ask if maybe we can kind of take a holistic view of what's going on, because the Rail Safety Improvement Program, the regulations came down in 2014, and things have gone back to the federal government to make some exemptions, et cetera, for like the farmland, private crossings. But there's still some real concern over the new standards that we all have to reach for all of our crossings across Middlesex County, where that money will come from, when the deadlines will be, et cetera, et cetera. And this affects each and every one of us. So if there's something that we could put together, not today, but in the future, for us to understand what's going on, so that we actually can, call our networks to find out where we could get more funding for this. Because if I'm not mistaken, it's only about $10 million that the federal government puts out for across the country for us to share in the 50% deal. And I think we all would like to have a little bit more when we have to upgrade those crossings. So that would be my first question. You want me to go right into the second one? Or just...
I don't know if Chris had a comment or anything.
Yeah, just briefly. I mean, we're well aware of the changes to the railway safety standards, policies, and guidelines. I participated in the original group that was fundamental in establishing those, and we're cognizant of the fact there's a pretty significant impact on these private crossings in our rural properties to agriculture. Dealing with those, certainly happy to come back with a little bit more information for council. And as Councillor Vander Hayden says, it might be a 50-50 split, but it's 50-50 of a very large cost improvement for many of these things. So, but I'm certainly happy to come back to County Council with a report in the future.
Thank you very much. And the next thing, now the question I have is only about 2 sentences, but I want to, if I could just put some context behind my statements, just so people understand why I'm bringing this forward. Our municipalities are benefiting from an increased interest in development and demand for new homes. This increase has occurred in combination with a substantial rise in the cost of housing, which, like many municipalities across Ontario, appears to be associated with the corresponding decrease in affordable housing options available for either rent or ownership. The lack of affordable housing options is threatening the growth and vibrancy of our community. Strathroy Caradoc staff and council members have received concerns about housing affordability from a number of sources, including those who work with vulnerable populations, who work to attract and retain employers in our community, families who wish to stay in our community but are being priced out, and those who work in land development industries who are pivoting to respond to tightening lending conditions and new market demands. The recent increase in housing construction has focused primarily on the development of single detached dwellings that are really ownership tenure. There has been virtually no construction of ownership dwelling types other than single detached dwellings, vacant land condominiums. While some rental housing has been constructed, much of it can be characterized as high-end rental townhouses. As housing prices increase, it appears that many households are being moved out of or away from the single detached home ownership market. And as we all know across our communities, there is nothing to rent. So the local housing market is missing several key housing types and tenures necessary to fill in this emerging housing gap, being affordable, such as apartment dwellings, street level multiple dwelling types that are both available for rent or ownership, such as townhouses, semi-detached, link, duplexes, and low-rise multiple units such as fourplexes and sixplexes. And you get the message there. While the task of encouraging missing middle housing is challenged by public perception and development costs, the need for new affordable housing stock is real and absolutely necessary. And there's a number of reasons why that is. One, it's to accommodate an aging population living in households with fewer people, to accommodate households with incomes that are not keeping pace with housing price increases, and to attract and retain employees and youth for the benefit of a vibrant and financially sustainable community. A lot of this information we shared with our own municipality in 2019. And I can tell you with the COVID, the extenuations have been, the gap has become even bigger. And so the need for attainable, accessible housing has really come to the forefront. Last week, I sent a note to the warden, the CEO, and the treasurer to share that Lambton County, as an upper tier government, is taking a role with respect to county-wide housing initiatives, and they have received some funding. So all that being said, my request today is to receive a report on what plans that Middlesex County has to address attainable housing in Middlesex. Lambton County has spearheaded the development of 74 new units, and I'm curious to know whether the county has a plan in place to address this issue in any way possible. This is something that I'm not sure if I'm supposed to bring forward as a notice of motion, or if this is something that council can get behind as a request for information, so we can maybe put a plan together, because it's not just Strathroy Care that's missing affordable housing. I know it's starting to affect all of us. So I was just going to throw that out there and see if there's any support for doing something in regard to report, but I'll leave that up to you, Madam Warden.
Okay. Great. Thanks for that, Councillor Vanderheyden. I guess maybe I would look to see if it generates any discussion from council, and then maybe get Kathy to think about how we want to proceed, whether it does need a notice of motion or what the next clerking step would be. So any comments from council? Councillor Smith.
Yes, through the warden. I would love to see a report of some sort, and I would also like to have Dirk also chime in as well in that report. I know that we're doing the official plan review process right now for the county, and I would love to see, if possible, something in there that says, new development, whether that's subdivisions or, infilling or whatever it would be, to have that diversification of single attached to townhouses, semis, a 3 or 4 story walk up, whatever that would be. I would really like to see that more so in our OP. So I would love to see a report of some sort, because we need to move forward on this, because Joanne, you're right. People are not able to afford to live in their own communities the way that the real estate market is moving.
It's 14 hours.
Sorry. Yep.
Mr. Mayhew.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Warden. Councillor Vanderheyden, Councillor Smith, I share your opinion. I'd like to see a report come forth from staff. I would be very happy to move that. And I think the participation of Dirk, Cindy, and even Kara, because it does affect, even in a certain way, the economic, socioeconomic development is exceptionally important in any municipality. On the socio side, the housing, the comforts of people, the safety that they require, and on the economic development, a place that enhances your community in which you live. But we see it in Southwest Middlesex that home ownership is becoming unattainable for many. And I think it's our duty to provide a good living for all our inhabitants, a safe, effective environment in which to live. And I would move the staff bring forth a report at their convenience. If there's a seconder for that, I would be very delighted to see something come before council for discussion. It's a big subject, and I think we need the expertise of staff.
Just before I ask for a seconder on that, Councillor Mayhew, I guess I would look to Kathy if that is an appropriate way to go, or do you want it to be as a notice of motion and go through that process, or is
we can just have a motion made for a staff report on affordable housing with taking into account the department heads.
Okay, so Councillor Mayhew's made that motion. I'll ask for the seconder with Councillor Vanderheyden. Any further discussion or comments? I guess, and I don't know if Cindy or Dirk want to weigh in on this at this point. I guess one thing we have to keep in mind is that we are not the CMSM for housing, and how that would play into our role and how that could affect things. But maybe that would be captured in the report. I don't know if there's any comment on that at this point.
We'll do some listening, Warden, and we'll do a lot of listening. I think it is a little hard to hear comparisons to other CMSMs that are responsible for this. I think it would be great if we were, but we're not. So when you talk about Lambton's report, they are the CMSM for social housing and for affordable housing. Huron is, all of these places around us are, and we're not. And so it makes it difficult to respond effectively to the challenges that you're facing in your community, that you're seeing on the street whenever you are clearly not the responsible body for it. But we will do our best to work within the system that we have. And I think you have been a strong advocate for us being our own CMSM on social housing and on social services and Ontario Works. And there's a strong reason for that. This is not the same community we were in 1998. The demands and the challenges that we face as a community are completely different than when we were in Middlesex, London in 1998 and the CMSM was created. And we're growing at such a rapid rate that the types of things that Councillor Vanderheyden is recognizing and pointing out are things that need to be responded to with a responsible party that is right on the ground dealing with those things. And the facts are we are not the CMSM responsible for social housing, but we should be. And so hopefully we can work together on getting there.
I think too, and I have this discussion as I'm sure you all do in your own municipalities, that there is, of course, we don't call it social housing anymore, but there is the social housing, and then there's the attainable housing, and those are different things. And while the CMSM, of course, looks after a certain demographic and population, bringing Dirk, as Councillor Smith has suggested, bringing Dirk and his department into sort of what a report looks like helps us, I think, with the attainable side of things that is beyond just those that are in a vulnerable population, and expanding kind of housing choices in our communities. Councillor Smith, I saw your hand up.
You said exactly what I was thinking. So I just wanted to make sure we had the other part of the thought in that report as well. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Before I call the vote, Councillor Mayhew, I see your hand up again.
Thank you very much, Madam Warden. It is our responsibility as councillors to advocate for those we represent. And I think prior to doing that and fulfilling that mandate, we have to understand the story. And it's not that I think that it's no one wants to take over someone else's job, but it is our responsibility to advocate for those that we represent. And I feel much more comfortable if I have a professional picture of the story before I really get my teeth involved in the conversation. So I appreciate Bill's remarks and administrations, but I think all of us would like to have a clear-cut picture of where we stand, what the atmosphere is like, what are the challenges we face, and I think we will be better advocates for that with that information behind us. Thank you.
Thanks. Before I call the vote, any other comments or questions, input from council at this time? Okay, so there is a motion on the floor, and I would ask at this time all opposed. Okay, and that's carried. So now it's in staff's hands, and I think it's fair to say that it will likely take a little bit. I know that they've got a lot of information at the ready, but perhaps we can give them a meeting or two to put it all together for our reflections. Okay, moving on to new business or any other inquiries or notices of motion. Okay, new business, and I'm going to ask Neil to speak to the report on the tender for acquisition of new ambulances.
Thank you, Madam Warden, and through you to members of council. So our last RFP tender for vehicles expired at the end of 2020. So we released a tender on the bids and tenders website for Middlesex County earlier this year. As a result, and the tender was for vehicles over a 3-year period at 9 vehicles per year. We received one bid that came back from Crestline Coach, which is I would suggest our primary vehicle type that we have been purchasing over the years through successive tenders. The prices that came are shown for 21, 22, and 23. And this will allow us some stability of knowing what the prices are going to be for the next 3 years of budget. And certainly it gives us some predictability. One of the areas of note is that the chassis or the front of the vehicle, the truck part of the vehicle is changing, and that impacted some of the pricing that we're seeing here, as well as some of the COVID. And certainly the request for council is for your consideration and approval of the tender as it was submitted. I'm happy to answer any questions, Madam Warden.
Thanks, Chief. Any questions on this one? Councillor Ropp.
Thank you. Through the warden to Neil. Neil, do you know offhand, or do we have the numbers what the price was? I can't remember for 2020.
I do, and I thought that question would come up. So our price last year was $153,000. So we are seeing about a $10,000 increase over last year. And part of that is the change in the chassis, the change obviously in the pricing from GM, which is primarily where these chassis are coming from. And as I said earlier, we're also seeing some of the impacts that COVID is having on some of this. That's what we're being advised from the manufacturer as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay, so you've got a motion in front of you to proceed with the purchase. If I could get a mover and seconder for that. Councillor Ropp. And a seconder, Councillor Smith. All opposed? And that's carried. And sticking with MLPS, we've got a report about 6 lease amending and extension agreement for Trossachs. And Chief, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you again, Madam Warden, and through you to members of council. So this is a request for council's approval to extend the lease for the Fossac station. in North London for a period of 1 year. We do have the ability, so the lease terms are the same as they were last year. We do have the ability to exit early if we need to. There is a 0% increase, so there is no increases in the lease. Middlesex London Paramedic Service, along with Middlesex County, continue to explore replacement options for this station. So that's why it is a 1-year lease. And certainly, again, it is in a good place at this point in time, but we are looking for a more permanent, longer term opportunity. Happy to entertain any questions, Madam Warden. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Questions on this one? Okay, then the recommendation is in front of you. A mover and seconder for that one, please. Councillor Richards and Councillor DeVitt. All opposed? And that's carried. Okay, we've got in front of us an extending letter with regards to the Southwest Lynn Long-Term Care Home Service Accountability Agreement. And for that, I will ask Brent to speak to it.
Thank you, Madam Warden, through you to Council. The Local Health Integration Network, or LHIN for short, is asking all health service providers, including Strathmere Lodge, to sign what's called this extending letter that enables the current service accountability agreement that we have with the LHIN to remain in effect until March 31st of 2022, without having to update the schedules that are attached to the service accountability. And those schedules usually get attached, or rather updated, at the end of each fiscal year. At first, it appeared the LHIN wanted to spare health service providers the workload of having to update the schedules. But since my report to Council, we have got correspondence from the LHIN that confirms that provincial LHIN planning and funding functions are being transferred from the provincial LHINs to Ontario Health, which is that provincial super agency that was created in 2019 to do the coordinating of the health system. So it appears that this extending letter has more to do with just making the transition simpler from the LHINs to Ontario Health. In any event, I am recommending to Council that the extending letter be approved and that the Warden and County Clerk be authorized to sign the extending letter on behalf of the county. Happy to entertain any questions to that effect.
Great, thank you, Brent. Any questions on this one? Okay, and with that, there, as Brent said, there's a motion and recommendation in front of you. If I could get a mover and seconder on that, please. Councillor Coyle Nielsen and Councillor Vanderheyden, all opposed, and that's carried. Okay, 2021 tax rates. Cindy.
Thanks, and through the Warden. In front of Council is the 2021 tax ratios. Tax ratio changes approved by Council only affect the distribution of municipal levy. Tax rates for education purposes are regulated by the province and are not subject to municipal tax decisions. In accordance with the Municipal Act, the county must approve tax policies for the upper tier tax ratio setting and the upper tier rating bylaw. As we discussed during budget, and you just heard today from MPACT, the Ontario budget postponed the 2020 assessment update. What does this mean? It means that the property assessment for the 2021 property tax will be the same as in 2020. So the 2020 provincial budget introduced some new tax policy options for municipalities in 2020, which include, and there's a couple of them and they're in the report. So one, reducing the business education taxes, which is BET, municipal flexibility to target relief for small business, streamlining municipal options for business vacancy programs, new assessment tools for redevelopment areas, and extending property exemption to properties used by veterans, clubs, and/or organizations. So today, I'm only going to focus on two of them. and that is the small business and the business vacancy programs. So the first option is the municipal flexibility to target relief for small business. This is the most notable property tax reform contained in the 2020 budget. Based on information available to date, beginning in 2021, municipalities would be able to provide a property tax reduction for eligible small business through the adoption of a new optional small business property subclass. The new subclass would be part of the broad commercial tax class. However, timing is the issue with implementing this in 2021. The regulation has not been passed, and the assessment roll for 2021 has already been finalized. In addition, most of the local tier budgets have already been finalized as well. If council implemented this today, they would have to define small business. Municipalities do not have experience with this, and there's an additional work required. In discussions with the local municipal treasurers and municipal tax equity, I do not recommend implementing this in 2021. This is also consistent with the recommendations of other municipalities. I will complete a more fulsome review when the regulation has been published, and I will continue to work with the local municipality treasurers. Council will be providing an update. I will provide an update to council when new information is available. And hopefully we can get that in place in 2022 if you choose to. The second item is the vacant and excess land subclasses, which fall under either commercial or industrial. So as of 2021, again, a new option, municipalities have the authority to alter or eliminate vacant and excess land subclass discounts without regulatory approval. Some municipalities are looking at this option, which is why in the report I included some information for you. Should council choose to pursue this alternative model or something similar, I could provide further information that will be expanded to include local levies to determine what, if any, interclass shifts are required by this policy change. I'd also have to work with your local treasurers on that as well. However, at this time, I'm not recommending that. I'm recommending status quo for 2021. In discussions with economic development, and there are a number of financial supports for business community that have been provided because of the 2019. These are on the economic development website, but a few examples are the Ontario Personal Protective Equipment, PPE grant, the Ontario Property Tax and Energy Bill rebates, the Ontario Small Business Support Grant, the Canadian Emergency Business Account, and the Canadian Emergency Rent Subsidy. I'm sure there's a lot more, but I just wanted to list a few of those for you. In summary, I am recommending that the tax ratios for 2021, as listed in the report, be approved and the bylaw be passed. And of course, I'm always happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. Questions or comments on what's been presented? Councillor Warwick.
Yes, thank you. It was a great report, Cindy, and very interesting to read. And I do think we will look forward to a discussion next year based on the recommendations that we're not doing anything about it right now. I'm just worried, about the timing of the report. Like the Sunday afternoon, it was a little bit hard to get all that going, and I think we're all pretty well agreeable about the recommendations. It's just that if we weren't, time frame is a bit tight. So I guess next year, before the rest of us start setting our budgets, I would imagine that report will be coming in plenty of time for us to be able to go through all of your recommendations at that time.
Through the warden to councillor. Actually, this is the same time it comes out every year. However, I can make sure that I get it in front of you a little earlier. To be honest with you, on Friday, as you know, I do a lot of research. I read a lot of other council reports, and I came across that additional information, and I just wanted to make sure I was doing my due diligence. So I was able to include that in the report for you. So I apologize for that. Next year, I promise it'll be a little bit earlier. But I did want to make sure that if other communities were talking about certain tax policy options, I put that in front of you to be able to look at.
And through the warden again, and I appreciate that, Cindy. And I have no problem working on Sundays either, but I just want to make sure that we've got all that good information in plenty of time next year so that we can have a really good discussion about it. Thank you.
And through the warden, I guess my final comment is, if you did choose, we do have until April in order to pass the tax ratios. That's why I make sure that I include it in March, because I know the local municipalities do like to finalize everything in the month of March, but there is the option to be able to still continue these conversations in April if you did choose to.
Thanks, Cindy. Any other questions or comments? Okay, you have a recommendation in front of you that I would ask for a mover and seconder on Cindy's recommendation. Councillor Warwick and Councillor Ropp. All opposed? And that's carried. Thanks very much. Okay, moving on, Councillor comments. Councillor Vanderheyden said she's got one.
I've got two, one really short one, but very important. And I don't know how many crossing guards there are across our communities, but tomorrow is National Crossing Guard Appreciation Day. And I know they work really hard to keep all of our kids safe. So I just wanted to recognize all the crossing guards that work diligently to make sure that our young people cross the street safely before going to school and coming home. So I just wanted to mention that. And the second thing, I just wanted to thank council and give you notice that I resubmitted my nomination papers for FCM last year. I did get a nomination from all of you saying that I could run last year, but I actually, and the year after, so I don't have to have another nomination. That's in place. But I sent my consent form in yesterday to run for the position of president of FCM. So I just wanted to thank everybody for that support, and I'll keep you posted on how this is all rolling forward. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Well, thanks for that update, Councillor Vanderheyden. Of course, we're all very excited for you and what the next year ahead will mean. Can you just refresh us, when is the FCM conference? Do we have a date confirmed on that?
Yes, it's in June. Let me just get the actual dates. It'll be on my calendar. Of course, it's not on this calendar. It'll be on my other calendar, but it will be in June, and the paperwork will be going out shortly. It will be a virtual conference. The nomination form for table officers the forms have come out, so they're ready to go. And as Councillor Elliott will know, that the next nomination papers for a caucus chair, a caucus position will come out shortly. So there's all deadlines for those to begin with, and then the table officers election will be first, and then the caucus elections will happen during the conference. And then they will also ratify the table officers. So merci beaucoup. I'm working on my French. It is really a difficult language to speak, but we're working at it. And as long as I keep trying, I think we'll get there. But that's my own.
Is there a Dutch option?
That would be really good, because I actually had a meeting with a couple of mayors in the Netherlands a week ago, and it was all on rural issues and how farms are working there and what their issues are compared to ours as international work with the FCM. And I did a whole paragraph in Dutch. It was awesome. I just had so much fun doing it. But I'm much smoother at that than I am at French. But regardless, I'm really grateful for the opportunity and humbled for the opportunity. And just wanted to let you know that it's in the works.
Councillor Elliott just let us know that it's June 3rd to 6th, and certainly, hopefully by then, we will be able to figure out a way to somehow celebrate your achievement. So we'll look forward to that. Any other councillor comments? Maybe at this time, I'll do it now so I don't forget. Just a reminder of our local council virtual visit on Thursday evening at 7 p.m. I believe all of the municipalities have received the Zoom link webinar information, but I know that Bill and senior staff have been working quite diligently to put together the presentation. I'm certainly excited about it. I think, while I'm disappointed that I have not been able to have the same sort of experience as previous wardens have had, going out to your actual council chambers and meeting with you physically, this format does provide us a different opportunity in bringing, you know, the departments to you. So as was said last spring and will likely be said on Thursday evening, when these visits happen, you know, not everybody comes. We can't bring Dirk and Chris and Kara and reports and updates from each department. So this platform gives us a different opportunity, and I think it's an important one that certainly our local councils can learn a lot about and learn more from. So I'm certainly looking forward to it. Bill, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you used the right term, though. We're just excited, and we've got I was saying to the warden today, we very rarely get this kind of time with local council members when we do the local visits. So it's going to be great. We're pretty excited to show what we have been doing and what we are looking forward to doing this year. So it's going to be great.
Yep, that's for sure. Okay, Kathy, bylaws.
Okay, the first one is a bylaw to adopt the 2021 budget of the County of Middlesex. A bylaw to adopt tax rates and the payment schedule of the 2021 county levy by the lower tier municipalities. A bylaw to provide for the remuneration payable to the warden. A bylaw to provide for remuneration and expenses, including conventions payable to members of council. A bylaw to enter into a 6th lease amending and extension agreement between the County of Middlesex, Middlesex London Emergency Medical Services, and John Brotzel for the Ambulance Station 4. A bylaw to authorize the warden and the clerk to execute a central garage tower agreement with Middlesex Center, and a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of March 23rd, 2021.
Okay, thank you for that. If I can get a mover and a seconder for the first and second reading. Councillor Elliott and Councillor DeVete. All opposed? That's carried. And a mover and a seconder for the third and final reading. Councillor Brennan and Councillor Warwick. All opposed? And that's carried. Moving into the committee of the whole, we have no delegations or reports from county officers. We don't have any action items, so we'll move on to correspondence. Letter from FCM advising that the County of Middlesex has been approved for a $50,000 grant from the Municipal Asset Management Program, MAMP. Chris, did you want to speak to this? I think we're all familiar with this one, but if there's anything you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Warden. And this is good news for everyone who participated. We all got notice that we all were approved. This is going back to, I think things fell off the rails. The applications were all in just around the time COVID was coming into being, but this was for our street scan. So it's capturing our road assets and the condition of those assets for Middlesex County and many of our local municipalities. Was a partnered application. So this is great news that we have finally received notice that we were successful in our funding application. So it's good news across the board.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, poster from Infrastructure Canada announcing $400 million for Canada's first active transportation fund and the development of Canada's first national active transportation strategy. Public sector salary disclosure. So there's a report from Cindy. Middlesex London Board of Health update for February 2021. Letter from the Municipal Engineers Association announcing the 2021 Bursary Awards Program. Councillor Vanderheyden.
I apologize, Madam Warden. I just wanted to speak to number 2, and that's the national act, the first national active transportation strategy. I think this is good news for across the country, and this is something that maybe we can really look at with our OP and our transportation studies and the things that we're working on with the bike paths and how we can connect trails in our different communities, et cetera, et cetera. This is a really important announcement, and we need to do everything we can to find a way to get some of that funding so that we can advance that in Middlesex County.
Thanks for that, Councillor Vanderheyden. Okay, moving on to number 6, AMO update entitled Phase 2 of Vaccination Plan, Bill 257, Supporting Broadband and Infrastructure Expansion Act, and Firefighter Training Modernization, dating March 5th, 2021. AMO update entitled Municipal Councillor Code of Conduct Consultations, dated March 8th, 2021. AMO update entitled More Social Services Relief Funding to Protect the Homeless During COVID-19 and Ontario Vaccine Rollout update, dated March 10th, 2021. Copy of the minutes from the Committee to Form a Middlesex County Archives, dated February 8th, 2021. 2021 Remuneration and Expenses, or 2020. OGRA alert entitled Amendments to the Asset Management Planning for Municipal Infrastructure Regulation. If I can get a mover and a seconder to receive those for information, please. Councillor Mayhew and Councillor Elliott. All opposed? And that's carried. Any inquiries? Moving on to new business, the next time we meet is Tuesday, April the 13th, but we'll see you all on Thursday evening. And just a reminder that we've tentatively booked June 16th for the golf tournament. Can I get a mover and a seconder to adjourn at 2:32 p.m.? Councillor Richards and Councillor Warwick. All opposed?